Hi, kiddos. So let's continue talking a little bit more about the Constitution. Yesterday, you watched a lecture on how the delegates had finally come to a conclusion. They compromised, and we outlined a little bit what our government looks like with the different branches of government and the checks and balances, how each of the three branches has its own set of responsibilities, and no other branch can do those responsibilities, but they have the opportunity to check each other's work. And this is just so that one government or one set of the branch of government doesn't have more power than the other. So let's go back to talking about the delegates during the Constitutional Convention. Because even though the Constitution was written and everyone agreed on it and signed, it still needed to be something called ratified. And when you ratify something is when you officially approve it. So the states still had to ratify the Constitution. The supporters of the Constitution had to figure out a way of how they were going to convince the American people that these changes were a good thing. Because remember, they already had the Articles of Confederation, they already had a set of government for the United States. And changing it would probably affect the opinions of the American people living there. So they had to come up with a way to convince them that they were a good thing, these changes were a good thing. So the supporters of the Constitution, those who approved of the Constitution, were called Federalists. And some of these were people like George Washington, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton. They were all Federalists because they approved of the Constitution and they supported it. Those who were against it, the opponents of the Constitution who weren't really on board yet, were called Anti-Federalists. And these included people like Samuel Adams, George Mason, and they had really strong opinions against it. While both sides made good points, they still had to debate a little bit more in order for it to become officially approved. For example, the supporters of the Constitution, the Federalists, they believed that the government was necessary in order to keep order. They didn't want everyone to just be free to do whatever they wanted. They needed one central power to control the United States. Because although we like to think of a peaceful world, we know that there's some people who break rules, don't follow the laws, and there needs to be a set of people, a group of people who control the American citizens or any other country that there is. However, the opponents, the anti-federalists, especially people like George Mason, they believed that there should be certain rights that Americans or the people who live in a country that's citizens, there should be certain rights that cannot be taken away by the government. Okay, and these rights are known as the Bill of Rights. Okay, the Bill of Rights is a statement of all the liberties or all the freedoms that are necessary to a group of people. So, for example, the Bill of Rights are all the things that are guaranteed to citizens of the United States, and that cannot be taken away by the government. Many states already had a Bill of Rights in their state constitutions. So some people believe that a national Bill of Rights was not necessary, because if you were a citizen in a specific state, you already were guaranteed some rights or some liberties in that state's constitution. So during the Constitutional Convention, there was a group of people like George Mason who believed there absolutely needed to be a national Bill of Rights, and he wanted the others to agree with him, but most of them didn't agree. We talked about how the Constitution, in order to become official, needed to be approved by the majority of states, and the majority in this case would be 2/3 of the states, and there's 13 currently, okay, in the time that we're talking about. So 2/3 of those 13 states had to approve or ratify the Constitution in order for it to become official. The states of Massachusetts, Virginia, and New York had a group of anti-federalists, and they opposed the Constitution. They didn't want to be on board. They didn't want to sign it. Massachusetts believed that a Bill of Rights was necessary, so they weren't going to sign until they adopted a Bill of Rights for the government. The other states, however, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, and New Hampshire all had approved with a 2/3 vote. Okay, so there are a few states in there who were not, who didn't approve yet, like Virginia and New York. But because the other states had already approved it with 2/3 of a vote, it became official regardless of Virginia and New York deciding. This became official in June 1788, and that picture on the side, you can see all of the people who signed it and ratified it. And even though it had already passed, it was already official, 2/3 of the states had voted against or voted for it, Virginia and New York still hadn't decided. And it didn't really make sense for a lot of the states to continue on if not every state approved it. So it didn't make sense for them that Virginia and New York were going to be part of the United States if they didn't agree on the Constitution. So James Madison promised these two states to work on a Bill of Rights for the national government. So he said, look, we're going to compromise. I'm going to write one out for the Constitution so that there's a set of liberties for the American people that the government cannot take away. And this helped Virginia and New York approve of the Constitution. So about a year later, in June 1789, James Madison asked the House of Representatives to add a Bill of Rights to the Constitution. Because the Constitution is an official document, you can't technically change the Constitution. You can only, or you can't like make it a whole new document. You can only make changes to it, not just start from scratch. So any changes that you make to the Constitution are called amendments, okay? So if you want to take things out, if you want to add things, you have to amend the Constitution. And these amendments, okay, the first 10 amendments are known as the Bill of Rights that the government set for all American citizens. And basically, the Congress' first action that they had to take, their first responsibility, was to pass these 10 amendments. We're going to talk about those tomorrow in a little bit more detail, but you all might know the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press, assembly, all of those good things, liberties that are given to us because we are American citizens, okay? So this happened in 1789. So now in the Google Slides, you're going to see this video. So go ahead, and once this video is finished, you can click out of it and open up the Social Studies Google Slides and scroll down till you find this video. It's on YouTube also. It's about the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, and it kind of just summarizes a little bit about their views and what they debated about. And finally, when they ratified the Constitution. And once you're finished watching that, go ahead and answer this question that's on the Google Classroom attachment. And I want to know, if you were an American during the ratification of the Constitution, would you be a Federalist? So would you be for the Constitution, or would you be an anti-Federalist? Would you be against it? And one of their main opinions was about this National Bill of Rights. So did you think having a Bill of Rights was necessary? Did you think it wasn't? You can go against, or you could go without it. And would you have voted for or against the Constitution? So make sure to answer in about a sentence or two and explain why in the Google Classroom attachment. If you can't open it, remember it's going to open blank and you're just going to type in your answer there. But if it's not letting you, you can send your answer in a private comment and I'll read it and send you your grade back. Okay? So go ahead and view that YouTube video and make sure to answer before it closes tonight. Okay, see you tomorrow when we talk about the Bill of Rights in more detail.